Leela's days became a whirlwind of activity, between coordinating missions, managing supplies, and fending off increasingly aggressive attempts by Victor Kane's mercenaries to locate her ships. She barely had time to sleep, yet despite the chaos, she felt alive in a way she never had before. Every delivery of food or medicine, every smile from someone she helped fueled her determination to keep going. But as the pressure mounted, cracks began to show. One evening, after returning from a mission to deliver vaccines to a remote island ravaged by disease, Lila found herself sitting alone in her cabin, staring at the flickering light of a small oil lamp. The quiet was unsettling. Even the hum of Aurora's system seemed distant tonight. She replayed the events of the past few weeks in her mind, trying to make sense of everything. Her life had changed so drastically, so quickly. One moment she was a fired nurse struggling to pay rent. The next, she was commanding 4 interstellar vessels and dodging corporate mercenaries. It was exhilarating, yes, but also exhausting. Alex Carter, who had become something of an unofficial partner in her efforts, noticed the strain on her face during their last debriefing session. "You're pushing yourself too hard," he said gently, leaning back in his chair. "Even superheroes need rest." "I'm not a superhero," Lila replied sharply, though without real anger. "I'm just doing what needs to be done." "Exactly," Alex countered. "And that's why you can't burn yourself out. If you collapse, who's going to take care of all this?" He gestured toward the holographic displays showing upcoming missions and resource allocations. Lila sighed, rubbing her temples. "I know, but there's always more work to do, more people who need help. I don't have the luxury of taking a break." "What about letting others share the load?" Alex suggested. "You've got 3 other ships besides Aurora. Why not recruit some trusted allies? You don't have to do everything yourself." The idea lingered in her mind long after Alex left. He was right, she couldn't handle everything alone. As much as she hated admitting it, spreading the responsibility might actually improve efficiency. But trusting others wasn't easy for Lila, after years of relying solely on herself. Opening up felt like stepping into uncharted territory. Still, she decided to give it a try. Over the next few days, she reached out to a handful of individuals. She'd met through her humanitarian work people whose integrity and dedication matched her own. Among them were Dr. Alina Ruiz, a compassionate doctor specializing in disaster relief; Marcus Lee, a former Marine-turned-logistics expert; and Priya Patel, a tech genius with a knack for solving problems under pressure. Each brought unique skills to the table, and each shared Lila's commitment to helping those in need. Introducing them to the ships was nerve-wracking. Lila led them to a hidden clearing where Solace, Sentinel, and Nexus waited, their cloaking devices temporarily deactivated. The group stared in awe at the sleek, glowing vessels, their jaws dropping in disbelief. "This is unreal," Marcus murmured, running a hand along Sentinel's hull. "Are these seriously yours?" "They are now," Lila said simply. "And I want you to help me use them." After explaining the basics and carefully omitting any mention of Xerax or alien origins, Alila divided responsibilities among her new team. Alina took charge of Solace, overseeing medical missions and organizing aid deliveries. Marcus focused on Sentinel, using its defensive capabilities to protect vulnerable communities from threats like armed militias or natural disasters. Priya worked closely with Nexus, optimizing its adaptive systems to tackle complex challenges, ranging from rebuilding infrastructure to providing emergency communications. With her team in place, Ila finally allowed herself a brief moment of relief. For the first time since acquiring the ships, she didn't feel like the weight of the world rested solely on her shoulders. Together, they formed a cohesive unit, working tirelessly to bring hope to places that desperately needed it. But while progress was being made, Victor Kane grew bolder. His mercenaries intensified their efforts to track down Lila's operation, deploying advanced surveillance drones and bribing local officials for information. One night, as Lila reviewed mission plans aboard Aurora, Iris interrupted her with an urgent alert. "Intruders detected within proximity," the AI announced calmly. 3 drones approaching from the northeast. Lila's heart sank. She had known this day would come, but part of her had hoped to delay it longer. Rising from her seat, she activated the ship's cloaking device and contacted the others via encrypted channels. "We've got company," she warned. "Stay alert and prepare for possible interference." Within minutes, the drones arrived, hovering silently above the forest canopy. Equipped with thermal imaging and signal scanners, they began sweeping the area methodically. Though invisible to the naked eye, Aurora's energy signature remained detectable to specialized equipment. Lila clenched her fists, debating whether to flee or confront the threat head-on. Before she could decide, Sentinel sprang into action. Under Marcus's command, the ship launched decoy flares designed to mimic heat signatures, drawing the drones away from Aurora's location. Meanwhile, Priya used Nexus to jam the drones' communication links, cutting them off from their operators. The plan worked at least temporarily. Two of the drones veered off course, confused by the false signals, while the third exploded mid-air after colliding with one of Sentinel's defensive projectiles. "Well, that was fun," Marcus commented dryly over the coms, "but we should expect bigger trouble soon." "Kane won't stop until he gets what he wants." "He won't get anything," Lila replied firmly. "Not while we're still breathing." Despite their victory, the incident left everyone shaken. It was clear that Kane's resources far exceeded theirs. They needed reinforcements, not just manpower, but expertise capable of countering high-tech threats. Reluctantly, Lila reached out to Xyrax once again. "Victor Kane is escalating," she explained, projecting her thoughts across the vast distance separating them. "We managed to fend off his drones, but it's only a matter of time before he sends something worse. I need your help." Xyrax's response came swiftly. "Lila Monroe, but you are correct. This foe requires more than human ingenuity. I will send emissaries to assist you." True to its word, Xyrax dispatched to allies, Nira, the apprentice navigator Leela had befriended earlier, and Dax, the strategist who had mentored her during her training. Both arrived aboard a small scout vessel, landing discreetly near Aurora's position. Their arrival lifted Lila's spirits immeasurably. Having familiar faces and powerful allies by her side made the looming battle seem less daunting. Over the following days, the group devised a comprehensive strategy to counter Kane's advances. Nira provided insights into stealth tactics used by her people, teaching the team how to mask their movements and confuse enemy sensors. Dax analyzed Kane's operations, identifying weaknesses in his supply chains and communication networks. With their guidance, Lila and her crew fortified their defenses, upgrading each ship's systems to handle even the most sophisticated attacks. Yet amidst the preparations, Lila couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was at play. Kane's obsession with her ships went beyond greed. He wanted control, dominance, and if he succeeded, the consequences wouldn't stop at Earth. Whatever happened next, Lila realized, would shape not only her future, but the fate of countless lives across galaxies. As she stood aboard Aurora one final time before implementing their plan, gazing at the stars twinkling faintly in the night sky, Leela whispered a silent promise to herself. No matter the cost, she would protect what she'd been given. Not just for humanity, but for everyone who believed in the power of kindness, courage, and hope. The journey back to Earth aboard Aurora felt like stepping into a dream. Lila sat in the command chair, her hands resting lightly on the smooth controls as Iris guided the ship effortlessly through hyperspace. The view outside the panoramic windows was breathtaking, a swirling tunnel of colors and light that seemed alive, shifting and dancing as they traveled. For hours, Lila simply stared, mesmerized by the beauty of it all. This wasn't just space travel. It was an experience unlike anything she'd ever imagined. When they finally emerged from hyperspace, Earth came into view, a pale blue dot, suspended against the vast blackness of space. Despite its small appearance from this distance, Lila felt a surge of emotion seeing it again. It was home, the place where her story had begun. But now, after everything she'd been through, it felt different somehow. Smaller, yet full of possibilities. As Aurora descended toward the planet's surface, Lila took a deep breath. She wasn't sure what to expect when she returned. Would anyone believe her story? Would they think she'd lost her mind? Or worse, would they try to take the ships away from her? Zyrax had warned her that revealing too much about its civilization could put both their worlds at risk. So for now, she decided to keep the details vague, focusing instead on how she could use the ships to help others. Aurora landed softly in a secluded field near Lila's old cabin in the forest. The moment she stepped out, she felt the familiar crunch of leaves beneath her boots and smelled the earthy scent of rain-soaked soil. It was comforting, grounding. For a brief second, she almost forgot about the incredible adventure she'd just returned from. Almost her first order of business was figuring out how to explain the presence of 4 luxury starships parked discreetly around her property. She knew people would notice eventually, if not the ships themselves. Then the strange energy signatures, or the occasional flashes of light from their cloaking devices. She needed a cover story, something believable enough to satisfy curious neighbors, but vague enough to avoid drawing unwanted attention. With Iris's help, Lila created holographic projections around each ship, disguising them as abandoned industrial equipment left over from a failed government project. It wasn't perfect, but it would do for now. Anyone who ventured too close would see nothing more than rusted metal and tangled wires. Only those she trusted completely, and there weren't many, would know the truth. Over the next few days, Lila settled back into a semblance of normalcy. She visited the local grocery store, catching up with familiar faces and exchanging pleasantries. Most people assumed she'd gone on some kind of vacation during her absence, and she didn't bother correcting them. Instead, she focused on planning her next steps. With 4 starships at her disposal, she had resources most governments could only dream of. The question was how best to use them. One evening, as she sat in her cabin reviewing data provided by Solace's AI, Seraph, an idea began to form. Her nursing background had always driven her to care for others, especially those in need. Why not use the ships to deliver aid to places where help was desperately needed? Natural disasters, war zones, remote communities cut off from supplies. These were problems she understood firsthand. If she could bring food, medicine, and resources directly to those areas, she might be able to make a real difference. Excited by the prospect, Lila reached out to global aid organizations using Nexus's advanced communication systems. In hours, she received responses from groups eager to collaborate. They sent her lists of crises unfolding across the globe: famine in East Africa, flooding in Southeast Asia, outbreaks of disease in refugee camps. Each situation was heartbreaking, overwhelming even. But instead of feeling paralyzed by the scale of the issues, Lila felt empowered. For the first time, she had the tools to act. Her first mission took her to a remote village in Nepal, where landslides had destroyed roads and isolated hundreds of families. Using Solace, she transported tons of food, water purification systems, and medical supplies directly to the site. The villagers greeted her arrival with tears of gratitude, their faces lighting up as they unpacked crates filled with essentials. Children ran up to the ship, marveling at its sleek design and glowing interior, while elders clasped their hands together in prayer. "It's a miracle," one woman said, clutching a box of antibiotics. "We thought no one would come." Lila smiled, though her heart ached at their suffering. "You're not alone," she told them. "Help is here." Word of her efforts spread quickly. News outlets picked up the story, speculating about the mysterious benefactor delivering aid via futuristic technology. Some called her a guardian angel. Others dubbed her the Starship Nurse. Reporters camped outside her cabin, desperate for interviews, but Lila avoided them, letting her actions speak for themselves. She didn't want fame or recognition, just the chance to help. Among those intrigued by her story was Alex Carter, a journalist known for his investigative work. Unlike the sensationalist headlines flooding social media, Alex approached the topic with skepticism and curiosity. He dug deeper, piecing together reports of sightings and testimonies from grateful recipients of Lila's aid. Tracked her down, showing up unannounced at her door one rainy afternoon. Double quotes, Ms. Monroe, he said, holding up his hands in a gesture of peace. "I'm Alex Carter. I write for Global Truth Weekly. I'd like to talk to you about what you've been doing." Lila hesitated, unsure whether to trust him. Journalists had a way of twisting stories, turning good intentions into scandals. But something about Alex's earnest expression made her pause. "Come in," she said finally, stepping aside. Inside, over cups of tea. Alex listened intently as Lila shared parts of her story, carefully edited to omit any mention of Xyrax or alien civilizations. She described finding the ships abandoned after rescuing an injured creature in the forest and deciding to use them for humanitarian purposes. It wasn't entirely true, but it was close enough to pass scrutiny. "You're telling me these ships just appeared?" Alex asked, raising an eyebrow. "No strings attached?" "No strings," Lila confirmed. "They're mine to use, however. I see fit, and I've chosen to help people." Alex studied her for a long moment before nodding. "Fair enough. Look, I don't care where they came from. What matters is what you're doing with them. If you're willing, I'd like to document your work, not to exploit it, but to show the world what's possible when someone has the means and the will to make a difference." For the first time, Lila considered letting someone else in. Keeping the ships a secret was exhausting, and having an even one as unexpected as Alex might ease the burden. "Okay," she said cautiously. "You have to promise not to dig too deep. Some things are better left unsaid." "Understood," Alex replied, extending his hand. Deal. In the weeks that followed, Alex accompanied Lila on several missions, documenting her efforts with photos, videos, and articles. His pieces painted a picture of hope and resilience, highlighting not just the technology but the humanity behind it. Public reaction was overwhelmingly positive. Donations poured in from around the world, funding additional supplies and expanding the reach of Lila's operations. Even skeptics couldn't deny the impact she was making. But not everyone was pleased. As Lila's influence grew, so did the attention from powerful figures who viewed her fleet as a threat or an opportunity. Among them was Victor Kane, a billionaire industrialist with ties to private military contractors. Known for his ruthless ambition, Kane saw Lila's ships as assets to be acquired, no matter the cost. Kane's interest became clear when Lila received anonymous messages warning her to share resources or face consequences. At first, she dismissed them as empty threats, focusing instead on her missions. But when mercenaries began tailing her movements and hacking attempts targeted her ship's systems, she realized the danger was real. Xyrax, who had stayed in contact through secure channels, urged caution. "Victor Kane is dangerous," it warned. "He will stop at nothing to claim what he believes belongs to him." "I know," Lila replied grimly, "but I'm not giving him anything." With Sentinel's defensive capabilities and echoes, adaptive strategies, Lila fortified her defenses, determined to protect what she'd been given. Still, the looming threat weighed heavily on her mind. Helping others was one thing, but fighting to keep her ships was another challenge entirely. As she stood aboard Aurora one night, gazing out at the stars, Lila reminded herself why she'd started this journey. It wasn't about power or wealth, it was about making a difference. No matter what challenges lay ahead, she vowed to stay true to that purpose. After all, she hadn't come this far to give up now. The next few days passed in a blur for Lila. She stayed in a guest quarters provided by the elders, a room that felt more like a living work of art than a place to sleep. The walls shimmered with colors that changed depending on her mood, and the furniture seemed to mold itself to fit her perfectly. At first, she found it disorienting. Nothing here followed the rules she was used to, but soon she began to appreciate the comfort and care that had gone into designing the space. Every morning, Xyrax visited her, bringing updates about the starships being prepared in her name. Lila still struggled to wrap her head around the idea of owning not one but 4 advanced vessels. Each ship, Xyrax explained, was unique, tailored to serve different purposes while maintaining the same core technology. One was designed for exploration, capable of traveling vast distances across galaxies. Another focused on defense, equipped with weapons and shields far beyond anything humanity had developed. A third was built for diplomacy, featuring luxurious accommodations and state-of-the-art communication systems. The final ship was a hybrid, combining elements of all 3 to adapt to any situation. "They will be ready within the week," Xyrax told her during one visit. "Once they are completed, we can begin your training." Training? Lila echoed, raising an eyebrow. For what? To operate the ships, of course, Xyrax replied matter-of-factly. While their AI systems are highly intelligent, you must learn how to interface with them and understand their capabilities. These vessels are powerful tools, and wielding such power requires knowledge. Lila sighed, rubbing her temples. I'm a nurse, Xyrax, not a pilot or a scientist. I don't even know how to drive a motorcycle, let alone command a starship. You underestimate yourself, Xyrax said gently. You have already proven your strength, compassion, and quick thinking. Those qualities are more valuable than technical skill. Besides, the ship's AI will guide you every step of the way. Though Xyrax's words were reassuring, Lila couldn't shake the feeling of inadequacy. How could someone like Hersom, who had spent her life caring for patients and struggling to make ends meet, possibly rise to the challenge of commanding for interstellar vessels? Still, she didn't want to disappoint Xyrax, or the elders who had shown her so much kindness. If they believed she could do this, maybe she owed it to the man to herself to try. In the meantime, Lila explored the city under Xyrax's watchful eye. It was unlike anything she'd ever seen, a blend of natural beauty and technological marvels that defied imagination. Gardens floated mid-air, suspended by invisible forces, while streams of glowing liquid wound through the streets like veins. Buildings pulsed rhythmically, as if breathing, and holographic displays projected images of distant worlds and civilizations. Everywhere she went, people or beings rather greeted her with curiosity and respect. They seemed fascinated by her presence, often stopping to ask questions or offer small gifts. One afternoon, as she wandered through a marketplace filled with exotic goods, she met a young dragon named Nira. Unlike Xyrax, Nira was smaller and less imposing, with iridescent scales that sparkled in the light. She introduced herself shyly, explaining that she was an apprentice navigator eager to learn from experienced travelers like Lila. You've been to Earth, haven't you? Nira asked, her mental voice tinged with excitement. What's it like? Lila chuckled, amused by the question. It's complicated. Beautiful in some ways, messy in others. There's a lot of good, but also a lot of problems. Nira tilted her head thoughtfully. We hear stories about your kind that humans are both creative and destructive. Is that true? Yes, Lila admitted after a pause. Humans are capable of amazing things, but we're also prone to making mistakes. Sometimes it feels like we take 2 steps forward and 1 step back. But isn't that part of growing? Nira countered. Even our people weren't always wise. We learned over time just as yours will. Her words gave Lila pause. She hadn't thought about humanity's potential in quite that way before. Maybe Earth wasn't perfect, but it wasn't hopeless either. Perhaps there was hope for improvement, for progress. Maybe with these ships, she could play a role in helping her species move forward. As the days turned into a week, Lila threw herself into learning everything she could about the starships. The elders assigned her a mentor, a dragon named Dax, whose expertise lay in engineering and strategy. Dax was patient but firm, guiding her through simulations and holographic tutorials until she began to grasp the basics. He taught her how to communicate with the ship's AI systems, which responded to her thoughts and commands almost instantly. At first, it felt strange like talking to herself, but soon she grew accustomed to the seamless connection. This is Aurora, Dax explained as they stood inside the first ship, its sleek interior glowing softly around them. She is designed for exploration and discovery. Her AI, Iris, will assist you in navigating uncharted territories. Lila reached out to touch the control panel, marveling at how smooth and cool it felt beneath her fingers. And the others? Second ship is Solace, Dax continued. Built for humanitarian missions, it carries medical supplies, food, and resources to aid those in need. The third is Sentinel, a guardian vessel meant to protect against threats. And the fourth is Nexus, a versatile craft capable of adapting to any scenario. Each ship had its own personality embodied by its AI system. Iris, Aurora's AI, was calm and analytical. offering clear instructions without overwhelming. Leela, Solace's AI, named Seraph, was warm and nurturing, reminding Leela of a comforting friend. Sentinel's AI, called Vigil, was sharp and tactical, focusing on efficiency and precision. Nexus's AI, known as Echo, was flexible and intuitive, able to anticipate Lila's needs before she voiced them. By the end of the week, Lila felt a spark of confidence blooming within her. She wasn't an expert not yet, but she understood enough to get started. More importantly, she felt a growing sense of purpose. These ships weren't just gifts, they were opportunities. Opportunities to explore, to help, to make a difference. For the first time in her life, Lila felt like she belonged somewhere bigger than herself. On the day of the official ceremony, the entire city gathered to celebrate. The elders presented Lila with ceremonial keys, a symbolic gesture, since the ships operated through thought rather than physical mechanisms. As she accepted them, applause erupted from the crowd, filling the air with cheers and roars. Even Xyrax joined in, letting out a deep, resonant bellow that shook the ground beneath her feet. Afterward, Kellyan approached her, his expression solemn but kind. "Lila Monroe," he said, placing a scaled hand on her shoulder. "Your journey is only beginning. Use these gifts wisely, and remember, greatness is not measured by power, but by the impact you leave on others." Lila nodded, her throat tight with emotion. "Thank you," she managed to say, "for everything." That night, as she stood aboard Aurora for the first time, gazing out at the stars through the ship's panoramic windows, Lila allowed herself a moment of quiet reflection. She thought about her life back on Earth, the struggles, the losses, the moments of joy. She thought about Xyrax, who had trusted her when no one else would. And she thought about the future. Uncertain though it might be, whatever lay ahead, she knew one thing for sure: she was ready. The moment Leela stepped through the shimmering portal, her senses were overwhelmed. Colors danced around her like liquid rainbows, shifting and swirling in ways that defied logic. The air felt thick, yet weightless, buzzing with an energy she couldn't quite describe. It was as if she had been plunged into a dream one, where the rules of reality no longer applied. She stumbled forward, disoriented, until Xyrax's massive wings steadied her. "Stay close." Xyrax's voice echoed in her mind, calm but urgent. "The transition can be unsettling for those unaccustomed to it." Lila nodded, though she wasn't sure Xyrax could see her clearly. Her legs wobbled beneath her, and she clutched at the dragon's scales for support. Everything around them seemed alive, pulsating with light and sound. Stars streaked past like shooting meteors, and distant planets floated lazily in the void. For a brief second, panic bubbled up inside her. What had she done? This wasn't Earth anymore. This wasn't even the same universe. But before fear could take hold, a sense of wonder washed over her. She was traveling among the stars. Something she'd only ever dreamed about. After what felt like both seconds and hours, the swirling chaos began to settle. The portal dissolved behind them, leaving Lila standing on solid ground once more. She blinked rapidly, trying to adjust to her surroundings. They were no longer in the forest or anywhere remotely familiar. Instead, they stood in a vast open field, bathed in soft golden light. The sky above was a kaleidoscope of purples, blues, and greens dotted with multiple suns that cast long, overlapping shadows. In the distance, towering structures rose from the horizon, buildings unlike anything Lila had ever seen. They shimmered like glass but pulsed faintly, as if alive. "This is my homeworld," Xyrax explained, its mental voice steady and reassuring. "It is safe here for now." Leela took a deep breath, letting the surreal beauty of the place sink. And despite everything, the danger, the uncertainty, she felt a strange sense of peace. Maybe it was the way the air smelled faintly sweet, or how the ground beneath her feet seemed to hum softly as if welcoming her. Or maybe it was simply the fact that she wasn't alone. Xyrax was here, watching over her, just as she had watched. Over it back on Earth, as they walked toward the city, Lila couldn't help but marvel at the sights around her. Strange creatures moved gracefully through the fields, some resembling animals from Earth, but others completely alien. One creature looked like a cross between a bird and a jellyfish, its translucent body glowing faintly as it hovered above the grass. Another resembled a giant insect, its wings shimmering like polished metal as it darted playfully through the air. None of them seemed frightened by Zirax's presence. Instead, they acknowledged it with nods or chirps before continuing on there. "Way, they know who you are, don't they?" Lila asked, glancing at Zirax. "Yes," Zirax replied. "I am a guardian, a protector of this world and others like it. My kind are respected and feared by many." Lila nodded thoughtfully. She understood why. Even injured, Zirax radiated power and authority. Its size alone commanded attention, but there was something else too, a quiet dignity that made it impossible to ignore. When they reached the outskirts of the city, Lila paused to take in the view. The buildings ahead were breathtaking. They weren't constructed of brick or steel, but appeared to grow organically from the ground, twisting and curving like vines reaching for the sky. Some structures sparkled as if encrusted with diamonds, while others glowed softly, emitting a warm, inviting light. Between the buildings, streams of energy flowed like rivers, connecting one structure to another. Hovering vehicles zipped silently. Overhead, their designs sleek and futuristic. "This is incredible," Lila whispered, her voice filled with awe. "It's like magic." Zirax chuckled softly in her mind. "Not magic, though I understand why you might think so. Technology advanced beyond what your species has achieved, but technology nonetheless." Lila smiled, feeling a mix of pride and humility. Humanity had come far, but seeing this reminded her how much farther they still had to go. Still, she couldn't help but wonder, would humans ever reach a point like this? Could they? Before she could dwell on the question, a group of figures approached them. Like Zirax, they were tall and scaled, though smaller and less imposing. Their eyes glowed faintly, each pair a different color, and they wore flowing robes that shimmered like water. One of them stepped forward, his expression serene but curious. "Zirax," he said, his voice resonating not just in Lila's ears, but in her mind as well. "You have returned. You bring a guest." "This is Lila Monroe," Zirax introduced, gesturing toward her with a sweep of its wing. "She saved my life when I was injured on her world. Without her, I would not be here." The newcomer studied Lila intently, his gaze neither hostile nor overly friendly. After a moment, he inclined his head slightly. "A human," he mused. "Rare indeed." "Tell me, Lila Monroe, do all of your kind possess such courage?" Lila flushed, unsure how to respond. Courage wasn't something she associated with herself. She'd acted out of instinct, driven by compassion rather than bravery. "I just did what anyone would do," she said finally. Shrugging, the figure raised an eyebrow, at least what passed for an eyebrow on his scaled face. "Few would risk their lives for a stranger, let alone one of our kind. Your actions speak volumes." Before Lila could reply, Zirax interjected. "Kellyan, we must speak privately. There are matters of urgency that require your attention." Kellyan nodded gravely. "Of course." "Follow me." He led them deeper into the city, his movements fluid and deliberate. As they walked, Lila noticed that the streets were bustling with activity. Beings of all shapes and sizes moved about, some carrying goods, others engaged in conversation. Despite the diversity, there was a sense of harmony as shared purpose that united everyone. No one seemed rushed or stressed, and even the smallest interactions carried an air of respect and cooperation. Eventually, they arrived at a large dome-shaped building near the center of the city. Inside, the walls shimmered with intricate patterns that shifted and changed as they passed. Kellyan guided them to a circular chamber where several other dragons awaited, their expressions serious. Lila felt a pang of nervousness as she realized she was about to meet the leaders of this civilization. Elder Zirax began, bowing its head slightly. "I have returned, bearing news of grave importance. Hunters pursued me to Earth, seeking the artifacts within my body. Though I managed to evade them temporarily, their presence poses a threat not only to myself, but also to those who aided me." One of the elders, a female with deep blue scales and piercing green eyes, spoke up. You speak of the human woman who stands beside you. Yes, Zirax confirmed. Her name is Lila Monroe. She tended to my wounds and protected me despite the danger to herself. For her actions, I owe her a debt of gratitude under our code. The elders exchanged glances, their expressions unreadable. Finally, Kellyan stepped forward. Understand, Zirax, that bringing a human here is unprecedented. Their species is young, untested, that your word carries weight in the laws of our people demand repayment for acts of great kindness. Lila shifted uncomfortably, suddenly aware of how out of place she felt. These beings were wise and powerful, their knowledge spanning centuries, or perhaps millennia. What could they possibly offer her? A simple nurse from Chicago? What form will this repayment take? The blue-scaled elder asked, her voice gentle but firm. Zirax hesitated before answering. For Starships, it said finally. Equipped with advanced AI systems and unparalleled capabilities, such vessels are rare, reserved only for the most esteemed guardians. But given the circumstances, I believe they are fitting. A murmur rippled through the chamber, and Lila's jaw dropped. 4 Starships.
That sounded absurd, like something
out of a science fiction movie. Surely they were joking. But the elders didn't laugh or dismiss the idea. Instead, they nodded solemnly, as if this were a perfectly reasonable gesture. If this is your decision, so be it, Kellyan said. The ships will be prepared immediately. In the meantime, Lila Monroe, you are welcome to remain here as our guest. Lila opened her mouth to protest, then closed it again. What was she supposed to say? Thank you. That felt woefully inadequate. Instead, she simply nodded, her mind racing with questions. What would she do with 4 starships? How would she even begin to understand their functions? And what about Earth? Could she ever go back? As if sensing her unease, Zirax leaned closer. Do not worry, it said softly. You will learn. And when the time comes, you will know what to do. For now, that would have to be enough. Over the next few days, Lila's life took on a strange rhythm. Each morning, she would wake up before sunrise, pack supplies into her car, and drive back to the forest where the dragon lay recovering. She brought food, water, blankets, and anything else she thought might help. The creature, whose name she still didn't know, seemed to grow stronger with each passing day. Its wounds healed slowly but surely, thanks to Lila's care and the silvery fluid that continued to ooze from its injuries. Though it couldn't speak in words, it communicated through gestures, sounds, and even fleeting images that flashed in Lila's mind when their eyes met. One afternoon, as Lila sat beside the dragon, she felt a sudden warmth spread through her chest. It wasn't uncomfortably. It was more like a gentle hum, a vibration of energy that seemed to come from the dragon itself. Then, without warning, a voice filled her thoughts. Not spoken aloud, but clear as day nonetheless. Thank you. It said, You have saved me, Lila. Nearly jumped out of her skin. She looked around, half expecting someone to be hiding nearby, playing a prank. But there was no one, just her and the dragon. Did you just talk? She stammered, staring at the creature. The dragon tilted its massive head slightly, its glowing eyes locking onto hers. I am Zirax, it replied, its voice calm and steady inside her mind. And yes, I can communicate this way. My kind does not use sound as humans do. We share thoughts instead. Lila blinked, trying to process what was happening. Talking. Dragon. Telepathy. None of it made sense, yet here she was, having a conversation with one. Okay, she said slowly, taking a deep breath. Zirax, then. You're welcome, I guess. But why were you hurt? What happened? Zirax's expression, or what passed for an expression on its reptilian face, darkened. I was pursued, it said simply. Hunters sought me because of the artifacts within my body. They are ancient relics, remnants of my ancestors. Technology, many covet them, though they are meant only for guardians like myself. Lila frowned. Artifacts? Inside your body? Zirax confirmed. They are embedded in my scales, fused with my essence. They grant me strength, knowledge, and the ability to heal. But they also make me a target. Lila didn't know what to say. The idea of carrying priceless treasures inside your own body sounded both incredible and terrifying. Why would anyone want to hurt you for something like that? She asked finally. Greed Xerex replied, its tone heavy with sadness. Some seek power above all else. Others wish to study the artifacts to unlock their secrets for themselves. Few respect the laws of my people or the sanctity of these gifts. Lila nodded, understanding more than she cared to admit. Greed wasn't limited to space dragons or alien hunters. She'd seen plenty of it back home. Still, the thought of Xerex being chased across galaxies by ruthless mercenaries made her blood boil. Well, whoever they are, they won't find you here, she said firmly. Not while I'm around. Xyrax regarded her silently for a moment, its glowing eyes softening. Your courage is admirable, Lila Monroe. Few humans would risk so much for a stranger, even one such as myself. I'm not doing it because... You're a stranger, Lila said, shaking her head. I'm doing it because it's the right thing to do. Besides, you're not exactly a stranger anymore. We've been hanging out for days. To her surprise, Xyrax let out a low rumble that sounded almost like laughter. Indeed, it said, and for that, I am grateful. But I must warn, my presence here, puts you in danger. Those who hunt me may come looking for answers. If they discover you helped me, they'll leave me alone, Lila interrupted, her voice firm despite the knot forming in her stomach. Because if they don't, they'll have to deal with me first. Xyrax didn't respond immediately. Instead, it lowered its head, resting it gently on the ground. For a long while, neither of them spoke. The forest was quiet, except for the rustling of leaves and the distant chirping of birds. Lila leaned back against a tree trunk, watching Xyrax as it rested. Despite everything, the surreal nature of their meeting, the danger lurking just beyond the horizon, she felt oddly at peace. There was something about Xyrax that inspired trust, even in the face of the unknown. As the days turned into a week, Lila began learning more about Xyrax and its world. Through their telepathic conversations, she discovered that dragons like Xyrax weren't mythical beasts, but highly intelligent beings who served as protectors of their civilizations. Their species operated under strict codes of honor, valuing loyalty, wisdom, and compassion above all else. According to Xyrax, saving its life came with certain obligations. What kind of obligations? Lila asked one evening, curious. Xyrax hesitated before answering. Among my people, acts of great kindness are rewarded. Those who save a guardian's life are entitled to repayment, a gift of significant value. In your case, however, the circumstances are unique. You are human, and our paths rarely cross. Yet you have shown me mercy when others would not. For that, I owe you more than mere trinkets. Lila raised an eyebrow. More than trinkets? What does that mean? I will explain in time, Xyrax said cryptically. But rest assured, your generosity will not go unnoticed. Though intrigued, Lila didn't press further. She trusted Xyrax, and if it said she'd be rewarded, she believed it. For now, though, her focus remained on helping the dragon recover. Together, they formed a bond unlike anything Lila had ever experienced. It wasn't friendship exactly, not in the traditional sense, but something deeper, more profound. She found herself looking forward to their daily interactions, eager to learn more about Xyrax and its culture. However, not everyone shared her enthusiasm. On the 8th day, as Lila arrived at the clearing with fresh supplies, she noticed something unusual. The air felt different, charged, almost electric. Xyrax was already awake, its body tense and alert. Its wings, still healing but functional enough for short bursts of flight, twitched nervously. Stay close, it warned, its voice sharp inside her mind. Now we are not alone. Before Lila could ask what it meant, a loud crack echoed through the forest. Branches snapped, and footsteps too heavy to belong to any ordinary animal crunched. Closer. Her heart raced as she grabbed a flashlight from her bag, shining it toward the source of the noise. Emerging from the shadows were three figures clad in dark armor, their faces obscured by helmets equipped with visors that glowed faintly in the dim light. Well, one of them said, his voice distorted by some kind of filter. Like we found our prize. Leela stepped instinctively in front of Xyrax, her hands trembling, but her resolve unshaken. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice louder than she expected. "What do you want?" And the leader of the group smirked. Beneath his helmet, "That's none of your concern, miss. Just step aside, and maybe we'll let you live." "No," Lila shot back, clutching the flashlight like a weapon. "You're not taking him." The mercenaries laughed, clearly amused by her defiance. "Brave little thing, aren't you?" the leader said. "It's bad bravery won't save you." Behind her, Xyrax let out a low growl, its body coiling as if preparing to strike. "Do not fight them," it urged privately, its mental voice tinged with urgency. "They are dangerous." "I'm not letting them hurt you," Lila whispered back, her jaw clenched. The standoff lasted only seconds, but it felt like hours. Just as the mercenaries raised their weapons, a mix of futuristic-looking rifles and blades, Xyrax sprang into action. With a deafening roar, it lunged forward, its massive tail sweeping two of the attackers off their feet. The third fired a shot, which struck Xyrax's side, but barely phased it. Using its newfound strength, Xyrax unleashed a burst of energy from its mouth. Sending a wave of shimmering light crashing into the remaining mercenary, Lila watched in awe, as the attackers scrambled to retreat, disappearing into the forest as quickly as they'd arrived. When the dust settled, she turned to Xyrax, her heart pounding. "Are you okay?" she asked, rushing to its side. "I am fine," Xyrax assured her, though its breathing was labored. "But this changes nothing. They will return, and next time, they will bring reinforcements." Lila swallowed hard, the reality of the situation sinking in. Up until now, she'd managed to convince herself that the danger was abstract, something that existed only in theory. But seeing those mercenaries and realizing how easily they could have killed her was a wake-up call. "Then we need to leave," she said decisively. "Now." Xyrax nodded, its glowing eyes filled with gratitude. "Agreed, but know this, Lila Monroe. Leaving Earth means leaving behind everything you know. Are you prepared for such a choice?" She hesitated, weighing her options. On one hand, staying meant risking not only her life, but potentially endangering innocent people caught in the crossfire. On the other hand, leaving meant stepping into the unknown, trusting Xyrax completely and saying goodbye to the only world she'd ever known. After a long pause, she looked up at the dragon and smiled weakly. "Let's go," she said. "Always wanted to see the stars anyway." With that, Xyrax extended a massive wing, shielding Lila as it activated a hidden device embedded in its scales. A shimmering portal opened in midair, swirling with colors that defied description. Without another word, Lila stepped through, her heart racing with equal parts fear and excitement. Whatever lay ahead, she knew one thing for certain: her life would never be the same again. Lila Monroe had always been the kind of person who put others first. Growing up in a small apartment on the south side of Chicago, she learned early on that life wasn't fair, but that didn't mean you couldn't try to make it better for someone else. Her mother used to say, "If you've got two hands, one of them better be helping somebody." That lesson stuck with Lila all her life, even when it made things harder for her. It was late evening, and rain poured down in sheets. As Lila drove along a winding road through an isolated forest, the car's windshield wipers struggled to keep up with the deluge, smearing water across the glass. She sighed deeply, gripping the steering wheel tighter. Her mind replayed the events of the day over and over again. Had stood up to her boss at the hospital, refusing to cut corners on patient care just because the administration wanted to save money. It wasn't the first time she'd spoken out, but this time, they'd fired her. Just like that. No warning. No second chance. Just a cold dismissal and a security guard escorting her out of the building. Lila felt angry, hurt, and more than a little scared. How was she supposed to pay rent? What about her student loans? And what would happen to the patients who relied on her? She shook her head, trying to push those thoughts away. For now, all she wanted was to get home, crawl into bed, and pretend the world didn't exist for a while. But fate had other plans. As she rounded a bend in the road, something caught her. A dark shape sprawled near the edge of the trees. At first, she thought it might be a fallen tree branch, or maybe a deer struck by a car. But then it moved. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the shadow shifted. Lila slowed the car and pulled over onto the shoulder. The rain continued to hammer against the roof as she stepped out, pulling her coat tightly around herself. "Hello?" she called out, her voice barely audible over the storm. "Is anyone there?" There was no response, but curiosity and perhaps a lingering sense of duty drove her forward. She grabbed a flashlight from the trunk and approached cautiously. As she drew closer, the beam of light revealed something extraordinary. It wasn't a person, nor was it any animal she'd ever seen before. The creature was enormous, easily twice her height if it were standing upright. Its body was covered in shimmering scales that reflected the dim light, shifting colors like oil on water. Long, leathery wings lay folded against its sides, torn and frayed in places. Its face resembled a mix between a reptile and something almost human, with sharp cheekbones and glowing eyes that flickered weakly. For a moment, Lila froze. This was impossible. Dragons weren't real. They belonged in fairy tales and fantasy novels, not stranded on the side of a lonely forest road. Yet here one was, injured and clearly in pain. She took a hesitant step closer, her heart pounding in her chest. The dragon let out a low groan, its massive head lifting slightly. Glowing eyes locked onto hers, and though Leela couldn't explain how, she felt a surge of understanding pass between them. It wasn't hostile, it was desperate. "Oh my God," she whispered, lowering the flashlight. "You're hurt." Without thinking too much about what she was doing, or Leela knelt beside the creature. Up close, she could see the extent of its injuries. There was a deep gash across its side, oozing a strange silvery fluid. One of its wings was bent at an unnatural angle, and several of its scales were cracked or missing entirely. Whatever had happened to it, it must have been bad. "I'm not sure how I can help you," Lila murmured, more to herself than to the dragon, "but I can't just leave you here." The dragon let out another groan, this one softer, almost grateful. Leela glanced back at her car, then at the forest around them. She didn't have much, just her nursing skills and whatever supplies. She could scrounge from the trunk, but she knew she had to try. Dragging the creature into her car was out of the question. It was far too big. Instead, she retrieved a first aid kit, a blanket, and a bottle of water, and she returned to the dragon's side. "Okay," she said, taking a deep breath. "Let's see what we can do." She started with the wound on its side, carefully cleaning away the dirt and debris. With water-soaked cloth, the dragon flinched but didn't resist. Lila worked methodically, applying antiseptic and bandaging the area as best she could. The silvery fluid seemed to slow the bleeding, which gave her some hope. Next, she examined the damaged wing. It was beyond anything she'd ever dealt with before. But she managed to splint it, using sticks and strips of fabric torn from the blanket. By the time she finished, her hands were trembling. Her clothes were soaked through not just from the rain, but from the effort of treating such a massive patient. "You're going to be okay," she told the dragon, though she wasn't entirely sure if it understood her words. "Just hang in there." The dragon blinked slowly, its glowing eyes dimming slightly. Whether it was exhaustion or relief, Lila couldn't tell. Either way, she knew she couldn't leave it alone. Yet, glancing at her watch, she realized hours had passed since she'd stopped. Night had fully fallen, and the storm showed no signs of letting up. Reluctantly, she climbed back into her car to warm up and think about what to do next. Sitting in the driver's seat, Leela stared out at the dragon through the rain-streaked window. Her mind raced with questions. Where had it come from? Why was it here? Most importantly, what was she supposed to do with it? She couldn't exactly call animal control or take it to a vet. This was unlike anything she'd ever encountered. And yet, she felt drawn to it. There was something about the way it looked at her, so vulnerable and trusting. It tugged at her. HEARTS, TRINGS. After a few minutes of deliberation, Lila made a decision. She grabbed her phone and searched for nearby shelters or abandoned buildings where she could temporarily house the dragon until it recovered. Nothing came up, but she did find information about a state park ranger station about 10 miles away. Maybe they'd have ideas or at least resources she could use. With renewed determination, she started the car and drove off, promising herself she'd return as soon as possible. When she came back an hour later with blankets, food, and basic medical supplies scavenged from the ranger station, the dragon was still there, lying exactly where she'd left it. Relief washed over her as she hurried to its side. "I brought some stuff," she said, setting everything down. "Not much, but it's better than nothing." Over the next several hours, Leela tended to the dragon with a mix of determination and improvisation. She fed it scraps of meat she'd bought from a gas station convenience store, wrapped it in dry blankets to keep it warm, and talked to it constantly, her voice steady and reassuring. Though she couldn't understand its responses, which came in the form of soft growls and occasional flickers of its tail, she sensed that it appreciated her efforts by the time dawn broke. The storm had subsided, leaving behind a misty calm. Exhausted but satisfied, Lila sat cross-legged beside the dragon, watching as its breathing grew steadier. For the first time since losing her job, she felt a sense of purpose. Helping this mysterious creature wasn't going to solve all her problems, but it reminded her of who she was and what she was capable of. Little did she know, this act of kindness would change her life forever.